Hey, Stewart's Chapel, this is Don Pierson, and Don Counts here, and we're at my home, and this is Thursday's devotion. I want to take you to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 33 through 34. Do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. Awake to righteousness and do not sin, for some do not have the knowledge of God. I speak this to your shame. Now he's talking about God's own people again, and he's saying that some of his own people do not have the knowledge of God. And he says, that is not good. I speak that to your shame. Do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. Unfortunately, sometimes God's people can actually be the evil company. It could be the ones that actually lead someone else astray and lead another one of God's children even astray. There's a story I'm going to tell, and this story I'm going to call the River Float of Terror. It is probably one of my worst memories, but also one of the times in my life when I was the most thankful when it was over. And the truth is, this didn't have to happen. This happened because of me. I'm the one that took this group in this direction. I was the one that would not listen to the wise counsel of my wife. I'm the one who would not listen to anyone at that time. It was my intention that overruled the prompting and the nudgings of the Holy Spirit. This also took place in Belize. We had taken a bunch of the San Ignacio youth on an outing over towards Armenia, a village that I was working in for a church plant. And I took them down to the river by there where we would have baptisms, where the women would go to wash their clothes, where the children would go to play. It's a beautiful river. And just past that was a gravel bar where people would get gravel for roads and etc. That was also along the river. Now, from where we would have our baptisms to where this gravel bar was, well, it was only just a few minute drive. It wasn't that far. I knew it was the same river, so I was convinced. I said, man, that can't be far. The river at the baptism area was flowing, but it was no big deal. There wasn't any rapids or anything like that. It was pretty calm area. It was a good area for baptisms and washing clothes, etc. Over at the gravel bar, there was just a little bit of rapids, but the water was good and clean. Well, we had hauled all these youth there. We had a picnic. We played in that river, and everything was good. I had worked extra hard for a couple of weeks in getting inner tubes, truck inner tubes, tractor inner tubes, anything I could find for us to float, because all along I had planned on floating from that gravel bar to where the bridge was, which is just maybe no more than 3 or 4 minutes away drive. Some of the youth couldn't swim, and so some of the youth stayed back. My daughter stayed with my wife, and they all said that they would go down and they would meet us. And I said, well, we'll be there. It won't take us long at all. Hours. I'm telling you, hours later, we finally arrived. What happened was, when we got past into the river, we floated pretty well, and all of a sudden we're in the middle of the jungle. I mean, bush is hanging everywhere. There is nothing. We come around a curve, and all of a sudden a bend in the river, and that river turns into a river of terror. I mean, it's gigantic granite boulders. It's just shooting you down. And my son's with me, And we're flying and we're holding on to the rafts as best as we can. And when that river, it takes us under a bunch of what looked like bamboo that was briars, threw us up under there, literally up underneath the bank in total darkness. And when we come out, we're not on our floats. And I discovered that some of the youth that had come, I thought we had left all the ones who couldn't swim back at the van, but I discovered that some of them hadn't told me they couldn't swim. And floats are coming out without people. And I am afraid. The water is raging. They're up underneath there where there's literally a cave up underneath there. And then one by one, they start coming out and they are panicking, and every one of them see me. They're grabbing me. They're pulling me under. I'm basically drowning, and I'm trying my best to throw them out. I'm holding on to one inner tube that has survived. And I get one by one, I get them on it. We all make it. But it was only by the grace of God that we made it out of that part. Now here's the problem. We're in the middle of the jungle, and we are at a point of no return. We cannot go back. We are too far. We don't know that. We don't know how far we are, to be honest with you, because we've never done this. We don't know where that bridge is. Well, the truth is, we've just begun. We are still hours from where we're supposed to be. And we are down to just a few inner tubes left that survived, and everybody is holding on to it. Those who can swim are swimming. Those who can't are holding on to the inner tubes. And the water all of a sudden turns dead still. I mean, it's not moving hardly at all. So we swim and we swim and we swim. We are exhausted, hoping that every time we come to a bend that we're going to see my wife and the others. Now they're all there waiting for hours. They have no clue what's going on. This was back in the early 90s. There is no way of communicating to them. Hours pass. Fortunately, we don't go through any other areas as bad as that, but we did go through some other areas that could have been just as bad. I share that story to tell you that sometimes we can be the worst influence in other people's lives. Fortunately, everybody survived. But it was only by God's incredible miracle that we survived. Sometimes we have an incredible bad influence in the life of others around us. And you know what? Sometimes the others don't survive. Oh yeah, you might survive. But others don't. Some drown in our influence. There is you can find it if you Google, it's called Bible Love Notes. Bible Love Notes. In the Bible Love Notes, it identifies from the New Testament 4 types of people that God tells His children to avoid. The first one, they're just bad. That's what here. Evil company corrupts good habits. And they're just evil. They're just evil. You just need to avoid them. In 2 John verse 10, he says, flee, get away from false teachers. In 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 11, he tells us to avoid those who profess to be Christians, but who are living the life of a lost person. You need to avoid them. The 4th type, in Titus chapter 3, verses 10 and following, he tells us to avoid people who are just divisive, who are critical, negative, who are gossip, who are just, all their purpose is just about just dividing. And by the way, that's the enemy the devil seeks to divide. Now, I hope you get more out of this devotion than my story of the float of terror. I hope you also hear the fact that sometimes a well-meaning Christian, because he will not listen to the prompting of the Holy Spirit, can lead and steer others wrong. But I also hope you hear the God's fourfold warning to His people. Stay away from people who are evil and corrupt. Stay away from those who teach false teaching. Stay away from those who tell you they are Christians, but who would simply desire to live as lost people. And fourth, stay away from people who are just divisive. If you do that, there won't be any need for God to even mention the word shame in your direction. Love you, Stewart's Chapel.